A high-impact weather pattern is taking place over the country, with moisture streaming back in and several strong storm systems on the way. We can see on the water vapor all this moisture that's been streaming into the country over the past few days. This is a big change to the record heat that we've been having. The atmosphere is slowly getting primed and energized for rain chances ahead. Looking at our pattern, we have two distinct storms we're tracking. This is the first storm, a strong piece of energy that'll be coming on Wednesday, April 1st as well as Thursday. But behind it, we have a second storm that could be even stronger coming Friday into next weekend, which could bring impacts to Easter plans. Tracking out a broad overview, we can see our first system coming together very nicely. Strong storms possible on the south side, even freezing rain and snow possible on the north. But our second system comes in and we can see it even stronger again with widespread showers, storms all across the middle, central, and eastern parts of the country. These storms will be very wide impacting and bring strong storms to many. Today is Wednesday, April 1st. It's no April Fools. We're tracking some very dangerous weather in the coming days. In this video, I'll break down the impacts of what threats you can expect where you live. Let's start right off the bat with your severe weather risk for today on Wednesday. Now this update will change a little bit by the time you're watching this video, as I'm recording this on Tuesday evening, but the risk of highest concern is in portions of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, portions of the plains, especially in this red shade where we have an enhanced risk for severe storms. Even though in the green and yellow shade, we still need to watch out for some isolated to scattered instances of hail, wind damage, and even a few tornadoes. The tornado risk is highest in this threat across the southern plains, with a slightly lower threat for wind and hail across portions of the mid-Atlantic. So that orange shade, that's a 3 out of 5 enhanced risk of severe weather. We've seen this many times this year already, and on these days we do unfortunately see some damage and some pretty dangerous storms. So pay attention, even if you're in the yellow, but especially if you're in the orange. Some dangerous storms are possible late on your day Wednesday. A little bit more specifically, the tornado risk is certainly elevated. Anyone in this brown shade, you have the higher coverage of tornado potential, but if you're in these black hatched lines that we see here, that's a potential for a few isolated stronger tornadoes. So a few of them could be intense. This includes Kansas City, Wichita, brushing against portions of Dallas and Fort Worth. So make sure you have a way to get warnings later on your day Wednesday in case a few of these tornado warnings are issued. Comparing the wind and hail threat, they look pretty similar. The wind threat is on the left, the hail threat is on the right. The hail threat will be favored toward the start of the event, where very large hail, isolated up to 2 inches baseball sized plus is possible, before it turns more into a damaging wind threat where straight line wind damage, 60, 70, even 80 mile per hour wind gusts are possible. So this is also damaging and it'll be a little bit more widespread than the tornado threat. Definitely a good idea if you're in these areas to park the car under the garage Wednesday night and batten down any loose furniture in case some of the gusty winds move through. Alright, let's track it all out. Before the storm even gets here, it's moving into portions of the western US right now, bringing some much needed rainfall and snow over the mountains. It's been such a dry season in the west. They added insult to injury by this record shattering March heat wave we've had. Well, we're finally getting relief in the form of this rain. Some very decent snow up there. So if you're portions of the Four Corners, even further west to the Pacific Northwest, enjoy some of the rain. Going east of the Rockies though, the initial storm threat will be in that marginal risk across portions of the Midwest into the mid-Atlantic. Some of these storms popping up midday, they could be isolated strong to severe, some gusty winds, again small hail possible in this region. The bigger threat though will be further out west. As our storm really crosses the Rockies, what's going to happen is we're going to have a dry line moving into portions of the plains, interacting with all the moisture and warmth ahead of it. We have ample instability, we have a lot of energy in place, and boom, storms will be firing right around sunset, if not a little before. This is 7 o'clock and we can see this line of storms kind of come from nowhere. 2 hours before it's nothing, and then boom, just like that, we have strong storms racing across portions of Texas, Oklahoma, and even on Kansas. Initially, with some of these discrete supercells, we're looking at the threat for very large hail and tornadoes, but it'll quickly evolve into a wind threat as this line becomes established. So this is where widespread damaging winds are possible, all the way from Abilene in Texas up to Norman, Oklahoma. 9 p.m. on Wednesday evening. Again, bring the car indoors, prepare for some gusty winds possible with these storms. Everything will then start sliding and progressing to the east as we go into the overnight hours, and as it goes further east with time, the severe threat will diminish a little bit, especially as some of our energy gets lost, but some storms are still possible, and just general a lot of wet weather all the way from Texas and Austin up to Iowa, portions of the Midwest including Chicago getting in on this, with everything continuing to move east, and that'll take us into another severe weather threat coming in on Thursday. One last thing I want to mention, look up to the north across Minnesota, Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan. We have some snow, freezing rain, ice, sleet, some wintry weather possible. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but that could also be pretty significant. Here's your severe weather risk on Thursday. Again, slight adjustments to this possible, but in general, we're targeting the Midwest. Chicago right in the bullseye, near Detroit, Peoria, Davenport. This is as that dry line moves east, some re-destabilization of the atmosphere could strengthen some storms to isolated severe, especially for hail and wind, but even a lower end tornado threat is possible. Let's continue where we left off on the model. So we're now waking up on Thursday morning and we can see our messy line of storm moving east. To me, Thursday's severe weather threat looks a little more disorganized, a little more haphazard, where we'll just have a lot of storms in the area. So any of these storms here in the Midwest could bring gusty winds, large hail, even the isolated tornadoes possible. The peak severe weather time will be in the afternoon. Notice we have this slight re-strengthening. This is 4 p.m. with some storms moving through Chicago, central Illinois, even further south toward Memphis. So watch out for your evening commute on Thursday, and then everything gradually weakens. This is the end of the model, but it'll continue moving east with our first storm system. Look out to the west in the Rocky Mountains. This is storm system number 2 that I mentioned at the top of the video. This will then bring even more severe weather and impact Friday into Easter weekend. We'll talk about that in a minute. While the severe weather threat is certainly dangerous and impactful, I'd be remiss not to mention also the winter weather risk. So as I was showing earlier, across portions of the northern plains, we have somewhat of a significant ice threat that's going to be developing. Initially, we'll have some snow mixing in, but look at this area of pink and purple across Minnesota, especially Wisconsin, but also the UP of Michigan. This is where we'll have some relatively warmer air higher up in the atmosphere, but at the surface, we'll still have some freezing cold conditions. This could produce a somewhat crippling ice storm for the region, especially for those that's caught in between the rain and the snow as this winds up. So we're watching mainly from Thursday to Friday. That's our main time period of concern. Here's a look at the GFS's ice accumulation map, and some of these values of up to a ½ inch of ice, that's pretty significant. It only takes a little bit of ice to weigh down the power lines, weigh down the tree limbs, and make roads very dangerous and hazardous to travel. So something we're watching out for across this region. It'll be kind of tough pinpointing exactly where the rain transitions to the ice before transitioning to the snow, but generally southern Minnesota, most of Wisconsin, and then the UP of Michigan, you're most at risk where we want to prepare for a potentially damaging ice storm Thursday into Friday. On the northern side though, we could get some fairly significant snow as well into the Dakotas and then central Minnesota. Minneapolis, St. Paul, you'll kind of be on that line between snow and ice. You'll probably get a wintry mix of both, so it's tough to tell. But portions just to your north, including Duluth and also further to the west, widespread 6+ inches of snow is possible. Isolated up to a foot can't be ruled out. So fairly significant, nothing too unusual for this time of year, but we are starting to head deeper into spring, getting a little more late season. So this might catch some of us off guard. Okay, that's all the impacts from storm system 1. Ice, snow in the north, severe weather in the south. Storm system number 2, as I mentioned, a little further out in the future, but potentially bringing us even more significant impacts. This map will look different by the time you're waking up Wednesday if you're viewing Friday's risk for yourself, but as of this recording, we have a day 4 slight risk across portions of the central plains, extending into Iowa and Missouri. And this is fairly significant where if the Storm Prediction Center has enough confidence to issue this 4 days out, this means severe storms look pretty likely and potentially on the higher end of severe weather, so something we're watching very closely. And then even beyond Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, while as of this recording there are currently no severe weather probabilities, definitely expect some more to be issued in the coming days as more severe storms are expected as we narrow in down on the threat a little better. So we'll keep timing a little bit broad because there's still a lot of details we don't know. Of course, we'll have more information in the coming days as we get more data, but here's storm system number 1 departing. This is the beginning of storm system number 2. Again, we'll have some more snow for portions of the Dakotas and the northern plains, so how about that? 2 separate snow systems possible. This though is a mess of rain and storms starting to come together on your day Friday, and again the severe risk is highest across portions of the plains, but it could be expanded with time, so something we're certainly watching. As it's moved east, notice a lot of storms anywhere in the yellow. That's where some stronger thunderstorms continue to be possible. This is Friday now into Saturday. What might happen is the storms consolidate into somewhat of a line. If this happens, widespread damaging winds could be possible again, and then this will continue moving on to the east, gradually weakening with time it looks like, but still some isolated strong to severe storms can't be ruled out. This is now on Easter Sunday, so much of the central plains y'all will be drying out for Easter. Areas further east though, that's where the storm will potentially still be impacting. Timing will still shift around a bit and we'll watch it, but as we go later into Sunday and eventually into Monday as that storm system clears, we'll have a lot quieter and drier weather coming in. So again, we'll have a lot more details and specifics on the severe weather threat, but more damaging, dangerous storms are possible, especially on the southern end of the system Friday into Saturday. Finally, ending out with the temperatures, because you'll notice a fairly significant cool down for Easter. So we have some warmth. This is some of the fuel for that severe weather risk over the next few days. Storm system number 1 will bring a slight cool down, again, especially to the north where we have the snow. Obviously it'll be a lot colder, but the warmth kind of resurges. Storm system number 2, that'll bring a more significant push of cooler air. We can see the cold front very clearly here on the map, the sharp divide between the warmer and the cooler temperatures. Well, the cooler air will win out and it'll feel a little bit more like early March, maybe even late February than it will April across the region. So once that second storm system cools out, some cooler air moving in, more stable and dry conditions behind it, it'll feel pretty nice for Easter in the 60s and 50s for highs. Here's what that means for temperatures. All the 70s and 80s we've been seeing the past few days ahead of the front, well, that'll that'll give way to 40s, 50s, and 60s. So again, a cooler stretch for Easter. Pretty pleasant though, pretty perfect weather once those storms clear. We just have to get through them first, and that's the danger that we'll be watching over the next few days. So thanks for watching. We're most focused in on the short term, that severe weather threat, especially that enhanced risk across portions of Texas and the southern plains. Watch out later on your day Wednesday when that line of storms move through, but even after that, daily severe weather risks will present themselves Thursday, Friday, Saturday, even into Sunday I expect. So we're entering a very active stretch just from those two storm systems. And then again in the north, watch out for that ice and snow threat. I'll have more updates over the next few days, especially once that second storm system comes a little more into focus and we have more details. I'll share them with you as you get them. So consider subscribing if you don't want to miss any of that. Thanks for watching. Hope you all stay safe out there and have a great rest of your day.